this virtual discussion with Stephen Hilton from Addiction to Media Influencer. We are so happy all of you can join us. And Stephen, on behalf of the MCNY community, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you and to thank you for sharing the inspiring story of your personal journey with us. As you may know, many of our students at MCNY begin their lives and their MCNY stories in very challenging circumstances. And yet by the time they graduate, they have not only changed their personal trajectories, but they go on to make positive change in the lives of others, much as you are doing today. We look forward to hearing from you and to learning from you. And we thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join the Metropolitan College of New York community. Stephen, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Well, welcome participants. I'm Dr. Ardovini. I'm a dean at Metropolitan College of New York. MCNY was founded by Audrey Cohen in the 1960s. Our mission is to empower students through purpose-centered education. It is this focus on empowerment that makes this event with Stephen Hilton a perfect pairing. His determination to empower himself and others by sharing his story of recovery is admirable. His experiences not only speak to our human services students, our CASAC students, our community health education students, but his business acumen is a stellar example for our business students and media students. Mr. Hilton has worked with Depeche Mode, Gwen Stefani, U2, Alicia Keys, Kesha, Pharrell Williams, and Madonna. He has worked on soundtracks for Hollywood feature films such as Ocean's 11, 12, 13, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Great Gatsby, Zoolander, Fast and Furious 6, The Amazing Spider-Man, and Madagascar. Stephen is the husband to the wonderfully hilarious Laura Clery and is the father to an adorably handsome son, Alfie. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce a man that is living his life with purpose, Mr. Stephen Hilton.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, this is great. I love to. I was told when I was first in recovery that I should never turn down an AA request or a request to help people that might be in trouble with addiction. So that's been something that I've kind of kept going with, because basically I got sober. Well, I started this journey of sobriety 16 years ago, and I'd gone really, my life had fallen apart. It had completely fallen apart. On the outside, everything was okay, but inside I was just sort of dying, really. My life was just so dark, and my whole life had become about using. Like my every waking hour was about, from the minute I woke up, it was about how do I get oblivion? How do I get out of myself today? You know, life was just very, very difficult to deal with on an emotional level. I couldn't deal with it because I'd started to use and drink, and I was relying on that to live. So I'll start telling you a little bit about, you know, the story of how I got to that point. I grew up in England in a small town just outside London. My mum and dad were very working class people. We didn't have a lot of money. I went to the local school, and from a very young age, from like maybe 5 or 6, the thing that I really remember defining quality of me being a kid was fear. I was always scared of everything. Everything just seemed a little terrifying. Like talking to people was weird. I didn't know how to fit in with people. I didn't know how to insert myself into a social group and, you know, function in that group. I didn't know how to. I feel like everyone had a rule book about how to live life, and I just didn't get it. And I remember that from very young. So when I was, you know, a kid, I started to use what I now know as addictive behavior. So sugar, sweets, candy, I would use those I'd feel bad, so I would eat as much, you know, sugar and candy as I could to give myself a little bit of comfort. And then another thing that I've realized now is an addictive behavior, lying. I would just lie about everything. I'd just make this fantasy world, and I would just, that would be, I've constructed a completely made up world in my head, and I would just, that's where I would live, because the real world was a bit too difficult. So I realized now, looking back with the help of working with a lot of people who have helped me in recovery, that this way of thinking has been in my sort of makeup from that age. So fast forward a bit, when I was about 13 or 14, I discovered music. I discovered synthesizers, and I just thought, I'm really interested in this thing that you can, because I didn't know how to write music. I wasn't classically trained, but I love the idea of being able to make music on your own, because I didn't like anyone. So I wanted to be sort of self-sufficient, and this was a way I could make music on my own and not have to sort of collaborate with anyone in a way. So I managed to convince my mum and dad to get me this thing, and I just fell in love with this whole process about being isolated and making music. Around that time, I stopped going, I got so obsessed with this, I stopped going to school. So 13, 14, I started, I would have to, my school was about a half an hour train ride from my house, and my mum worked in the same town. So I would go to school with my mum on the train. She would drop me at the gate. I would go into the entry of the school, go around the back, and she would go to work, and I would come home again and go and hide at home playing with this synthesizer. So I discovered this passion. At the same time, my school was going to hell because I wasn't turning up, and the school would ring my mum and say, where Stephen, why isn't he at school? And she'd be like, I dropped him off, I don't know why he isn't there. So in England, if you don't go to school, they make you go to a child psychologist if it's over a considerable time. So the school said he's got to go and see a psychiatrist. Why isn't he going to school? And I was just tunnel focused on music. So I went to see a psychiatrist, and he was like, what do you think you're going to accomplish by doing this? Like, I remember very clearly, he goes, you're never going to make anything out of yourself by programming synthesizers and making music at home. And that really triggered something in my head. I was like, I had this rebellious thing, like, I'm going to show you that I will do something like this. Like, I remember that being a driving force, like, he's wrong. I need to convince him that I will do that. So in a way that made me even more, I went to school even less, and I really focused on this thing. Fast forward, I started making these little records, and when I was 15, I started sending tapes out to people of what I was doing. And I got a call back from a record company, and they were like, these are really good. Like, what's your, how old are you? What's your story? They didn't realize I was still at school. And I was like, okay, this is great. This is a way out of school, and I can convince my mum and dad, this is a real thing. They were always really supportive of my music anyway, as a side note. But so this record company, like, we're going to give you a little deal to make music. And I was like, right, I'm out. I'm out with the school. I don't fit in. I don't enjoy it. So I was off and in that direction. They were building a recording studio in London. They said, you can come and live at the recording studio while you do your deal. So I learned about how to work a studio. I learned about, and from the ground up, I saw it all being built, and I was making music, and it was amazing, and it was a great time. Around that time, I started using drugs. I was working a lot. I was making like pop records on my own and for my own little project. And then I was asked to do remixes for like clubs. And I was only about 16 at this time, but it sort of exploded a little bit. And it was like, I was being pulled in different directions. It was really exciting. But I thought, if I use speed, this will be good, because I can work all night and all day. And I discovered this, and I started using, and it was like not only was it giving me the energy to do all this stuff, but it was like all the problems I had in life with the fear and not fitting in, all the things that I was finding difficult, this drug made them not difficult anymore. And I was like, oh, wow, this is how you're supposed to live. Like, this is my solution to life. Like, this drug is making all these things go away that are making my life difficult. And I didn't expect that. And I loved it. I was like, okay, this is amazing. Like, all I have to do is be on drugs all the time and life is going to be easy. So it was great. For a while, it was great. And it was a solution and it worked. And it was enabling me to do all these things. And my career was taking off a little bit. And so hand in hand, they were kind of going along. And then it stopped working. The drugs, they stopped giving me that relief. And then I just needed them. So it was like it was a need. Like I would feel so bad if I didn't have this stuff that I would wake up in the morning feeling so bad. I was like, I just need to feel better. So I have to have this stuff just to function. So it was no longer giving me all those benefits, but I still was having to take it. And that is the classic scenario, because I couldn't live without it and I had to use it to live, but it wasn't giving me any benefits anymore. So I discovered, I thought, I need to stop doing this. It's not that I need to stop taking drugs or drinking. I just to stop this specific drug. So I thought, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to replace it with drinking. And I hadn't really drunk before. So when I went into drinking, it was straight off to excess, to oblivion again. I just wanted to get out of it. So it wasn't a slow build to drinking. It was like, I need to get off this, so I'm going to take this. And it worked. So I thought, oh, brilliant. I'm not an addict, because I was able to stop that, but I was drinking like crazy every day again, same thing, but just a different substance. So all the time this was happening, the external stuff was really successful. It was getting bigger and bigger, and I was working with more and more people. My music was starting to get recognized. It was becoming successful. So it was a weird time, because one side of my life was good and one side of my life, everything was kind of falling apart, which is what I was talking about at the beginning. That's how I got to that point. And it was a very dark time, because I was like, wait, all this stuff was supposed to make me happy. I was very young at that time. I was probably about 20. I bought a flat in London. I had a posh car. I had all the trappings of the success, but inside I wanted to die. And I was like, this isn't what it's supposed to be. This isn't what life's supposed to be like. Everything I've been told by culture is saying that if you get these things, you're going to feel great. It's not working. Why isn't it? I remember very, very clearly being in my new flat that I bought. Everyone was, all my friends were like, oh, this is amazing. Look how well you're doing. You know, this is really great. And I had a party and they were all around, like, congratulating me. And I remember looking out the window going, I want to die. I don't know why stuff isn't working. And if this isn't working, what else is there in life? So I guess I knew I had a problem around that time. So I thought, I don't know how to solve this, and I don't really know what it is, but something's wrong. I didn't put together the drinking and the drugs as this problem. I thought it's something else, like there's something wrong with me. Perhaps it's just me, and I don't know, perhaps I'm wired wrong. Like, this stuff should be working. I'm ungrateful. You know, I've got no excuse to be feeling like this, whatever. So I got a big job around that time, one of my first film jobs, which was Ocean's 11. And it was a very small crew. It was me and maybe 5 other guys. I had a band with a guy called David Holmes, who was a film composer. And we came out here to work on that film. And I was drinking and using so much at this point, but everyone else was. Well, looking back on it, I was drinking more than they all were. But in my head, I was like, I'm fine. Everyone's doing this. This isn't weird that I'm out of control. Everyone's out of control. And we were all a bit out of control, to be honest, but it was an incredibly exciting time doing a big movie out here. And one night we'd all gone out to some do or something, and we'd taken magic mushrooms, and I was drinking a lot. And I remember the next morning I woke up, and I've tried to explain this, what happened in so many meetings of recovery, because I've told this story, because this is where the wheels came off. And I can't explain exactly what happened, but it felt like the world was about to end. Like I couldn't explain. On top of the emotional feeling of this doom and like panic, I need to get out. My body wasn't really working how I wanted it to work. And I tried to explain this in meetings for a lot of times, and people have come up to me, like old timers in recovery, and said, that's called the DTs, what you had there. And it's a thing that happens when you are heavily alcoholic, and it's where you shake and you can't function. So it was like, maybe it was that, I don't know. But anyway, I didn't know what it was, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but no one can know. So I called up the hospital and I said, I called up a doctor. I called up at the hotel we were in. I said, I need a doctor to come out. In that time, I was like, I need to go to the emergency room. Something's going wrong. So I got in a taxi, went to the emergency room. And when I was in there, I explained to the doctor what was going on. And he said, how much do you drink? And how do you take drugs? And how much drugs do you take? So I halved the amount. I thought, I can't tell him, that's crazy to really tell him. So I'll halve it. And he said, wow, you need to stop, because that's a dangerous amount. And that was the half that I told him. He said, you need to stop doing that. That's the first time anyone had really said, connected that this was what was going on. And a funny aside is he said, the emergency room there was a fireman coming in. There'd been some kind of accident, and there were people with being brought in on stretchers. And the doctor goes, this guy in the corner of me, we need to get him out of here. He's freaking out. We need to get him out of the emergency room, put him in a secure place. So the only place they had left was like a children's ward, and they put me in a Sesame Street little, like a little children's pen, and I was literally sitting on a tiny child's chair looking at the Sesame Street creatures, going, I've broken my brain. This is it. This is how I'm going to live now. I'm going to live in one of these children's pens. I've done it. So anyway, I come back out of there. He gave me some sedatives. He said, don't drink with these. So of course I was like, oh, drink with these. If he's saying don't do that, this is probably going to be great. So I was using both of them together, and happened again. The same episode happened again the next week. And I called up the doctor I'd called before in tears. I was like, you've got to help me. I don't know what's going on. Every week I get this feeling that my life's ending. He said, come to see me in the next week. But in the meantime, before you come to see me, I want you to limit your drinking. You could only allow 2 glasses of wine a day. That's it. So I was like, okay, I can do that. And for the next week, I tried to just limit my drinking to 2 glasses of wine a day. And it was it was insane. I couldn't do it. And I'd never realized I had a problem with alcohol until that guy said, limit it. I couldn't. If I had one, I had to keep going until I was on the floor. And I was like, why can't I? I'd never tried to stop, and I couldn't. And it was terrifying. I was like, I can't do it. I can't do this 2 glasses of wine that he's talking about. I don't get it. So that was the first realization. Then I go to see him, and he says, you're an alcoholic. You need to stop drinking. Now, I found out recently you're not supposed to diagnose other people, but I'm glad he did, because it's the first time I'd heard the word alcoholic with myself, which is weird to think because I was out of control. For a few years, I was out of control, but I think being in the music business at that time, it was kind of totally co-signed. I mean, I was turning up to work high and drunk most of the time, and everyone was just like, oh, that's Stephen, that's what he does. But, you know, he'll do some good music, but he'll be a nightmare. So it was fine, you know, that's how I was functioning. But for him to say you're an alcoholic, I was like, whoa, no, surely not. He said, I want you to, this time I was about to leave. We'd done the film, and he said, I want you to go to AA when you go back to London. So I went back to London, thought I'd give AA a try. And I called up the AA hotline, which anyone can do if they're struggling. And this lovely old guy came out a week later, and he said, I'm going to take you to a meeting, which is what happens if you call up the AA national helpline, say you've got a problem, NA as well, I believe. I think most 12-step fellowships, they have this great thing called a phone service. And if you call and say you've got a problem, I think it's the case here, someone will come and take you to a meeting. So someone will turn up at your house and help you and take you. So this guy, he was lovely. He was an older guy, late in his 70s. And he took me to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was a very rough area of London. I remember it was a smoking and non-smoking meeting, and the only differentiation between smoking and non-smoking was just the table in the middle of the room. So these people were smoking, these people weren't. So it was a big smoky room, and it was full of old timers, like full of people with long-term recovery. It was, but they didn't look like me. They didn't sound like me. There was no one my age in there. And the guy got up and told his story, and he'd been a bank robber. And he said, oh, I was a bank robber, and I got so drunk that I shot the bottom of the getaway car out of the car, and then the gang beat me up, and I couldn't identify anything he was saying. And I was like, well, I'm not an alcoholic, because this is crazy, this story, and that's never happened to me. I have never been to hospital, never been institutionalized. I'd never been beaten up because of drinking. I wish someone had told me at that meeting that I should have added yet to all of those things. I've never been to hospital yet. I've never been into an institution yet. I've never been beaten up because of drinking yet, because they all happened very quickly after that meeting. So I was like, these things haven't happened to me. I'm not an alcoholic. Great. I can go carry on as I have been doing. So at this time, I had all these psychiatric drugs to sedate me, and I was drinking and using. So in the next year, my life really got very, very dark, because these two things together are kind of pretty horrendous, and I would lose days and weeks, and I don't know what happened. I do know that I ended up getting desperate, and I said, I have to stop drinking. I have to stop drinking, but I don't know how to do it. And my girlfriend at the time was Polish, and she said, in Poland, you can get a surgical procedure where they implant something in your back, and it stops heroin and alcohol having an effect, and for 6 months. So that should stop you. So off we went to Poland, and the doctor who's going to do the procedure, before he did the thing, he said to me, now put this in you, and if you drink or take drugs, within 6 months, you're going to die. And I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. Like, I'm sorted for 6 months. I'm not going to drink, because if I drink, I'm going to die. So the doctor just told me that. So thank God I've got a reprieve for 6 months. I had the procedure. But 3 days after the procedure, I was drinking again, even after he told me that. I can't explain the feeling or the compulsion. If you give for an alcoholic or an addict to use, it becomes the top priority above everything else. if you're an addict and you're using, the drug of choice comes before your life, your family. And it isn't a choice. It just hops up there with the one substance. It just hops to the front of your whole priority list. It's everything. And I don't know why that is, but that's what happens. And we say in the program that one isn't enough and 1,000, what is it? I can't remember it, but basically it's that if you have one, you have to keep going. And so I remember sitting down 3 days after this and going, I am going to die, because if this guy's told me this and I'm using 3 days later, that's the end. How am I going to, I'm not going to be able to stop this. I never thought about AA. I've been to that one meeting. What I wish I'd realized then is that the solution for everything was in that room with that guy who was the bank robber. That was the solution to all my problems, but I didn't know. I couldn't put it together. So I was drinking again. I go back to the doctor. I say, you didn't do it right. You haven't put enough of that stuff in. I need more of it. I didn't die. I'm drinking. They put more in. I don't know exactly what this thing does when it relates to alcohol, but when they put the more of it in, I ended up they found me in the middle of the street outside of Warsaw in Poland. I'd been badly beaten up. I had broken ribs. To this day, I don't know what happened. The ambulance picked me up and they took me to hospital, to what that film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's where the ward looked like that. Like, so I was literally strapped down to the bed. I'd been in there for 2 days apparently, and I couldn't speak the language, so it was equally terrifying. It was terrifying because I couldn't communicate with anyone. I was strapped to this bed in a country that I didn't know. I didn't know where I was. I woke up and I was like, oh, these people are crazy people, and it's like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And now I know that was just an alcohol ward. All those people were exactly like me. They weren't crazy. They were crazy. They were crazy in the same way I was crazy. So that's where I belonged now, I realize. But at the time it felt like, anyway, so my mum and dad got involved. My girlfriend called my parents, and they known that I was out of control, but I kept all this really dark stuff away from them, and so had she. But she said, you know, this has happened, and they managed to get, I don't know how it happened, but they found me. And my mum and dad were clever because they don't have any money, my mum and dad, but they were like, we've paid for you to go to rehab, and if you don't go, we're going to lose the money. And that was huge guilt for me. I was like, I can't lose all that money. I have to go. And that was that was the thing that made me go to rehab. So I flew back to London, went to the 2-week residential rehab. And in this rehab, they talked about this thing called the 12 steps. And 12 steps of recovery are, it's a program for living. It's just it's 12 things that are a great structure for you to, number one, not use drugs. Number two, you get a complete spiritual awakening, which I wasn't expecting. And I just was like, I need something in that rehab, made me realize, look back at my life and go, your life is really terrible. Like, it's really dark, and all you care about is drinking and using. You don't care about anyone. I thought I was like a sociopath because I didn't care about anyone or anything at this point. Now I know that it was drinking and using. When you're an addict in your addiction, that thing I just talked about how it pops to the top of your priority list, that makes you not care about anyone. So I was like, maybe I don't have to go back to that. Maybe I can have a new life. I don't know, maybe I can. I don't know, but there's something about the 12 steps and I just got a little bit of distance because you weren't allowed to use or drink or smoke. And I got enough distance to go, I'm willing to try this because I do not want to go back to wanting to die every single day. And that's how I got. So all I remember from that rehab was 12 steps and get a sponsor. That's all I remember. Come out of rehab. Remember, I'm an addict and an alcoholic. So what do? We drink and we use. So my first thing when I got out of rehab is I'm going to go and drink and use. Forget everything that just happened. Just going to go and drink and use. I literally, on autopilot, go out of my house, try and go into drink and score drugs. And something in me goes, what about trying that other thing? Just try it. Why not? Do you really want to go back to that life? And I was like, no, I can. Okay, I'll try it. So instead of going this way, I went that way to an AA meeting. I went in and I sat next to a guy, and I said to him, because I remember in rehab, they said, ask for help. I said to this guy, I liked him. He had a light. Everyone in this meeting had a light in their eyes that I hadn't seen in anyone I've been hanging out with. They were lit up and they were passionate and they were colorful people. And I loved that. And I was like, help me get what you have, because I wanted that look in his eye and I wanted this guy, what he had. Help me, I'm going to go and drink and use. He said two things. He goes, you never have to drink and use again a day at a time in your entire life, and you can have a life beyond your wildest dreams. I was like, wow, that's powerful, but that's not true. That's just something he's saying, obviously. That can't be true. Actually, he was true. But so he said, we'll meet every Wednesday. We'll go through the 12 steps. The 12 steps are in a thing called the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. You can get it in any AA meeting. You can also buy it. It's the most stolen book from libraries because people don't want to admit that they have a problem and they steal the book. So it's a good book if it's the most stolen book from libraries. In there, and it's old-fashioned language. That's the problem. That the book is hard to understand. I can't understand it. We have to have someone take us through it because it's written in the 30s. The language is weird. It's very male perspective, and it puts a lot of people off. But underneath all that stuff, there is a solution to addiction. So it's important that for me, I had to get through all the I don't understand it. This guy broke it down to me in very, very simple language, and we went through the 12 steps. And something happened to me in those 12 steps. Not only did I not want to drink and use again, and that was gradual it took us about a year, but I changed. I started to care about people. I got the serenity they were talking about, this peace. And I just shifted and become a different person. And I had this consciousness of a higher power, which is for me has been incredibly important. This higher power thing's been amazing. And it can be anything you define it as. So higher power for me is God, but I mean, people have different, there's atheists that have got sober in 12 steps, multiple years with their own concept. But I had this concept, I've got this consciousness of a higher power, which gave me peace. And that's what I've always been searching for with drinking and using, always, that's what I wanted, peace. Being able to fit in, being comfortable in my own skin. This program gave me the same thing that I was getting from drugs and drinking. It was miraculous. And it was just, I'd ruined my professional life at this time because I'd had such a long time out of, and I'd let so many people down that I was kind of done in terms of music because I'd been making alcohol and drugs my number one thing. Anyway, once I got this program and got this concept, this higher power thing going in my life, I wanted to pick up my career again after about a year. And I was like, am I going to be able to do this now without being on drugs and drinking? But the two combined were an incredible, like, explosive thing, I think, looking back on it, because within quite a short time, my sponsor suggested that we wait a year before I had to get some level of sobriety before I launched back in. And when I came back from that, it was like a rocket had been lit, because suddenly on top of like the kind of moments of inspiration I get when I was using. I had sobriety, so I was focused. And that was a really incredible thing. And very quickly things started to happen, which I convinced is because I was sober. And I started to get incredible opportunities. I came to move out here. Hans Zimmer, who's probably like the biggest composer in the world, he called me up and he goes, I've been watching you, I've been listening to your stuff for a long time. I always wanted to work with you, but like, you're a crazy person. And I was like, I'm not anymore. Like I've, you know, I feel like I'm in sober and I've been through this anyway. Long story short, he said, do you want to come out and help me with this film I'm doing? I came out, we hit it off because I wasn't a complete nightmare anymore. I was able, people could rely on me more. Like doing a film is hard. It's a lot of organization, and a lot, you've got to be reliable because you've got directors, you've got studios. I couldn't have done that drunk. No way could I have done that high and drunk. The people wouldn't have trusted me with, because you'd be entrusted with a big investment of these studios into these big films. Anyway, because I was sober, we connected and we got on well, and I did good work, and that snowballed, and suddenly I felt like all these things came together, and I wasn't running the show. I wasn't trying to be like, oh, you've got to make this happen, you've got to make this happen. But I was drinking and using, I was always trying to sneak my way into situations or manipulate things. I was kind of just riding along with the stream of life, trying to anyway. And I try that still today. And that's been incredible. And that thing that guy said to me about you never have to drink and use again a day in your life, and you can have a life beyond your wildest dreams. It's true. And it's come true for me I can't explain how this program works. I've tried and I don't understand it. All I know is that it does work, and I don't try and analyze it too much, because all I have to do, my sponsor says, is 10 minutes a day to save your life. Like, my default setting is I want to use and drink, and I want to, even today, if I don't do 10 minutes of work on my step work every day, I want to go back to drinking and using. And I don't want to go back there, because I do actually have a life beyond my wildest dreams now because of this program. Because I had everything other than this program before, and my life was horrible. Like, I wanted to die every day. And now, like, I go along with the stream of life. This thing about social media, that was not me at all. That was a complete accident. Like, I met Laura, we started making videos, and they just blew up. And it's been an incredible last 4 or 5 years. And now I'm doing, it is a life beyond my wildest dreams, and it's not me, it's the program. It's for me, it's the 12 steps of my higher power, and a big one, my sponsor. I have to call and check in my thinking every day, because my head will tell me crazy stuff, and I can't really listen to my head, because as an addict, the internal voice will tell me that terrible ideas are good ideas. Because here's a thing that really helped me. Someone told me that the addict in me wants two things. It wants me alone, and then it wants to kill me. So if I listen to that voice, it wants to isolate me from people. It takes me away. It goes, don't trust that person. Don't. And especially now with, I feel like as things blow up and as the business gets more successful, this addict has more things that it can go, oh, look, or, this isn't this isn't going right, or this isn't going how you wanted to do. This should be going this way. Don't trust these people. And then it's like, it wants to draw you away from everyone. And then once it's got you, the addict will then convince you to use. And I've really found it's been an important thing for me to remember. So if I don't do the work, I start to isolate. I start to for me now, I use other addictive behaviors. It won't necessarily be drinking and drugs. It'll be work. It could be, you know, shopping. Food is a big one. Anything that I'm using to feel different. I got to be very careful to not use external things to make myself feel better, because if I'm doing that, that's dangerous. But so it's a regular maintenance, which is step 10, 11, and 12. I've made some videos about all the 12 steps on my YouTube channel. And it's too much to go into here, but basically they're easy. It's an easy process, but it's hard to do it. It's hard to, sometimes I'll be like, I'm too busy to do that, but I have to physically sit down and make myself do it. That's the hard bit. But I can't stress to you guys, if you're struggling, this solution works. And it's the only solution. I think I tried most things to stop being an addict, to stop using and drinking. I think I tried everything and nothing worked like this 12-step program. And you know, it's been an amazing journey, and the possibilities that are out there if we get sober are, but like I said, you can have a life beyond your wildest dreams. And I thought that sounds cheesy. It's true though. So thank you so much for having me. And you know, I really appreciate you asking me to do this. And thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. As you can see, many of the comments, people are very appreciative. There are some questions. Dr. Newfield, one of my colleagues, wanted to know, what step did you work on today?
Today is 12, because this is 12 steps. So step 12 is about carrying the message. And maybe I'll be working on another one tonight. I might be doing step 10, which is taking a daily inventory and admitting when I was wrong. But step 12 is carrying the message of AA to people who are still suffering. So this is step 12, and it's a selfish thing, because I can say, oh, isn't this great? I'm talking about this stuff and helping people. I'm doing it because it keeps me sober. That's the beauty of this program, is that it works for me to help.
Well, thank you. Another question: what motivates the couple to share their personal experiences, referring to you and Laura, on these forums?
Well, it wasn't really planned. We've always just talked about what's going on in our lives. Basically, we've kind of been documenting that. Laura started off with doing character work, character comedy, and that became was really successful. And then when we got pregnant with Alfie, Laura was like, I can't really do these characters anymore because I'm pregnant. So are all the characters now pregnant? And we were like, what are we going to do? Like, is it over? Is that it? Because we can't do these comedy characters. And we were like, why don't we try vlogging, just talking about what's going on? And it was mainly like vlogging the pregnancy, because people were going through the same thing. But because we started talking about that, we started talking about other things that were going on in our lives. And it just came up naturally that I think she talked about going to a meeting, and people were like really, it really touched people. They're like, they wanted to know more about the sobriety. So we made a couple of videos about that. And it's just, especially with COVID, it's been a really good way to feel connected to other people, because we can't go to meetings anymore. We don't see real people anymore. So for me, I mean, I make the weekly videos I make about addiction are like going to a meeting. Again, it's selfish. I don't get to go to a meeting, so I talk to a phone. But I get the same kind of feeling. So,
well, then this is related to the pandemic as well. How are you being able to keep up your sobriety during this pandemic and all the anxiety and fear that people are feeling? I mean, you started your addiction with fear.
Yeah, fear is
with all this.
Yeah, fear is the root for me. They talk about it in the big book, 1,000 forms of fear. It says is the root of our addictions, and that, yeah, it's tough for people in recovery right now, because it is everyone's isolated, and isolation is very dangerous for an alcoholic. What I was talking about earlier on, the isolation, it wants me alone and it wants to kill me. So the isolation is being imposed on us. And then you've got to watch the other part, which says, why don't you just use? Like, no one's going to know. I made a video about when I got up to I wanted to make a video on the 12 steps. When I got to step 11, I had a using thought, and I really wanted to use, and it was very unusual for me after so many years of sobriety. So I was like, I'm going to talk about this. So I just talked about it. I was like, normally I would go to an AA meeting and talk to people in real life and go, guys, this happened to me. Instead, I made a video about it, and that connected with so many people. And I felt the using thought went away. It did work because I talked about it and I didn't want to use anymore. And on top of that, I feel like it helped a lot of people. So it's just like an AA thing in a way.
Yeah, it's like running towards your fear versus away.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Well, and the other question that's related is, how do you feel like Zoom is helping now with Zoom meetings versus in-person meetings? Do you prefer one over the other, or they're equally cathartic?
I think when it first started, I was like, I don't like Zoom meetings, and it's not the same, and I don't feel like it's doing the same thing for me. But then I talked to someone and they were like, that's your addiction talking. It wants you to not do meetings, because I was like, oh, this is a great excuse. Don't like Zoom, I can't connect. It's not like a real meeting. But that was just the addiction talking, and it's just different. I mean, nobody really likes change, especially addicts, I think. So I'm definitely, it's a slightly different mindset. It's not quite the same as being in person, but somebody said an amazing thing to me last week. They said, when you go to an AA meeting, all you normally see is the back of everyone's head, but on Zoom, you're seeing everyone's face, and that's really cool. And plus, you can go anywhere in the world now to an AA meeting. So that's really good.
All right. Another question is, what advice would you give to someone who's having a hard time sticking with the 12 steps?
I would say, do you have a sponsor? And if you don't, get a sponsor, and really call them, because that's what sponsorship is all about. When I've sponsored guys, let's put it the other way. If I'm struggling, I'll call my sponsor, and he will talk me off a ledge. Many times I'll call him, and I'll be like, I feel like I want to use this. I feel like this is a good idea, and he always has a solution. And I don't know, but it's not just him. If you're reaching out to someone else in the program, that person will almost always have practical solutions for you. I don't know how that works, but I've never been let down when I've called my sponsor, ever. And I've never wanted to use after I called myself out for it, which is weird. But. So
do you think that accountability to someone else is what keeps you present and sober?
I do. Yeah, I think it helps. I mean, going through the steps, I think will keep you sober, but the accountability is good for going through the steps will get you sober, but the accountability can keep you sober.
I think what we're starting to see now, because of the pandemic, people have been relying more on alcohol, and that is their social thing as well. Like people would have drinking parties on Facebook.
Yeah.
So now we're going to see an uptick in alcoholism and addiction. But how can you help? Someone wants to know, how can you support loved ones if they're going through this?
That's quite a tough question, because the crux of this is that you can't force someone to get help. If someone doesn't want to get help, or if they're not ready, there's literally nothing you can really do, which sounds kind of a sad thing to say, but there are tools. A great resource is Al-Anon. If you have a family member that's struggling with addiction, there's a great program called Al-Anon that Laura went to, and I tried as well. And it's all about, they say in Al-Anon, you can mention, you can tell the person that you're worried about, you have to get help one time. You can't keep saying it. You can say it one time, and then your responsibility is just to work on yourself. And very often with a family member who's an addict, the non-addict is also sick because they become codependent and they're like trying to protect the addict and trying to help. The compulsive helping is an addiction as well. And very often family members of alcoholics and addicts become sick with codependency. And
Yes.
it's really important that you get help for that, and Al-Anon will help you with that.
Thank you so much. One last final question, and I think this is the best question of the day, is can we see Alfie? Can we say hello?
He's just gone out for a walk.
Oh.
I heard the front door go. I thought he's obsessed with this room and he was knocking, but next time.
Well, thank you so very much for taking out this time of your day, and keep doing what you're doing. It's so appreciated. I think there's that this recording will be on YouTube, that you're going to be taking sections. It will be available on our website as well. So let's remember to look at the links that's in the chats, and you are in our prayers. Thank you so very much, sharing your mission, sharing your focus, and you empowered us today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. And for anyone struggling, go to a meeting, get a sponsor. That's what I did.
All right. Amen to that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all participants for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful day and learn something from this, and enjoy. From Metropolitan family to yours, be well, be safe, be sober.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.